by Adam Cartwright, posted 15 hours ago. 558 views. Music is one of those things that I've always appreciated in video games, but it only grows more and more important as I get older. For me, a good soundtrack can turn a good game into a great game, and in some cases even elevate an average release into something more special. This is an article I've been planning for quite some time, but have only just gotten around to writing one that celebrates all the fantastic music available among Vita games, something I want to look back on in years to come to remember all of the beautiful tracks that played while I was exploring the handheld's great library. The Vita has some great developers who really place music front and center as part of a title's presentation, and as such the handheld has given birth to some amazing tracks. The reason I've named this part 1 is because I'm constantly playing new games and listening to new soundtracks all the time, so I hope to revisit this in a year or so and look at what other games bring beautiful music to the console. But for now, and without further ado, let's start looking at some of the best music out there on Vita. So I decided to start my article by looking at possibly my favorite game studio ever, at least in terms of music. The JRPG development team behind the Atelier series has always had an incredible sound department that's created some amazing tracks, full of magical touches and beautiful instrumental use. Indeed, the Artonica Surge Concerto series is centered around heroines who can create magic spells by singing. It's a blessing, then, that many of these titles have appeared on Vita. Aside from there being fantastic games, they also have the killer soundtracks that the studio is famous for. Leading this charge is the latest game in the Surge Concerto series, Arano Surge. The title kicks things off in beautiful fashion with the track Empire in Verafanjang, a fantastic vocal track performed by Origa that really serves to demonstrate the incredible audio experience gamers will be treated to. Later tracks like Ya Alfini Nahir, a more upbeat song from slightly later in the game, continue this trend. It isn't just the Surge Concerto series that has great music, however Atelier is also loaded with amazing tracks. Whether it's the cheerful, upbeat opening credits song from Atelier Maria Claudia or the epic, sweeping final boss theme from Atelier Aisha Maria, the games just create a beautiful tapestry of sound that make crafting items and exploring new areas so magical. But it's one Atelier game in particular that absolutely nailed things in the soundtrack department for me: Totori. It's full of so many memorable songs that I found myself whistling for hours after playing, and includes many variations on familiar songs with slight tweaks that create a very different experience. A great example of this are the following: the Footsteps songs, the original version being a carefree adventure song, while the Plains version is a more magical rendition that at times reminded me of the Wild Arms series with its fantasy western feel. Truly, the game includes some incredibly memorable tracks. Falcom. If there's one studio that rivals Gust in the sound department, then it's Falcom. The historical Japanese developer, a stalwart supporter of Sony hardware since initially committing to the PSP back in 2006, has released multiple titles on the Vita since 2012, mixing in its trademark screeching electric guitar sounds with more traditionally epoch tracks, to create some of the most beautiful music available on the handheld. The first of these games, we received in the Westwise Memories of Celceta, is easily the strongest in terms of sound. The franchise has been memorable throughout the years for some epoch tracks, and this entry is no different, whether it be an enjoyably addictive dungeon crawling tune in Underground Ruins, or the epic final boss theme False God of Causality providing a fantastic bookend to the massive enemies you'll fight throughout. Each is loaded with character. Similarly, the team's work on the Legend of Heroes series is to be commended. Of note is the battle track, to become the foundation of an era, which feels tense and exciting, while the final boss theme, The Decisive Collision, is up there among the best songs they've ever written, perfectly concluding the first Trails of Cold Steel game. The music team's mix of instruments, tempos, and beats continues to be exciting, and I love their use of electric guitars for a number of tracks, meaning it's always a joy to uncover each new soundtrack. The best part of all is that I've got 3 more Falcom games to look forward to: Trails of Cold Steel 2, Tokyo Xanadu, and Ys8 Lacrimosa of Dana. I'm purposefully avoiding listening to the OSTs for these titles so that I can experience them firsthand while playing through the games, but I'm expecting them to be as good if not better than the composer's previous work on Vita, and if any of you have already played them, you can let me know whether there are any killer tracks on there. The Danganronpa series, a revelation in its own right thanks to some tight, narrative-focused gameplay. The Danganronpa series has also spawned some fantastic music ranging from tense class trial tunes to soothing exploration tracks. Chief among these is Beautiful Days, the gorgeous and relaxing song that plays when exploring the school during the day. It creates a calm, chilled atmosphere, which serves to contrast with the actual action once the murders start taking place. Things get a little more tense with Trial Underground, the preparation song which helps you prepare to take on your classmates in the class trials. Once in the trial, fantastic tunes like Discussion Heat Up really highlight the thrills happening on screen. Things peak even further in Danganronpa 2. Taking place on a desert island, tracks like Beautiful Ruin capture this vibe with a Caribbean sound, easing you into your new surroundings yet doing it with a familiar arrangement from the first game. The sequel in general lifts heavily from its predecessor, remixing leitmotifs with new purpose, something that works incredibly well. It's the song Ikoria, however, that remains the highlight of the game, an incredibly exciting tune playing at the climax of the game's web of confusion that has you solving a complex and unbelievable murder. Although a weaker title in general, as you can read in my review, the spin-off Midcool Danganronpa Another Episode still features some great tracks, although in a slightly different style than the other games. Starting with Ultra Despair Girl, the game's main theme, things seem to have taken a more funky shift in a new direction, yet somehow the track remains instantly recognizable as something straight out of the Danganronpa world exploration theme. Wonderful, that is a similarly funky track that remains addictive and mysterious, and as with the songs from the first and second games is remixed later on. Wonderful Dead 4 is a more subdued yet beautiful version. With Danganronpa V3 recently released, I'm more than ready to be treated to some funky remixes of the series' most famous songs with, hopefully, some great new tracks as well. The Steins Gate series. When your game relies heavily on narrative reading in order to progress, it's almost a requirement that your soundtrack also be up to scratch to keep people interested. That's very much what 5PB did with Steins Gate, a beautiful tale of time travel gone wrong. Right off the bat it keeps the gamer engaged thanks to the beautiful track Gate of Steiner, a menu theme that manages to be both mysterious and creepy yet sweeping and epic. This is continued through the opening credits song Skyclad Observer, which starts off lovely and instrumental yet mixes in vocals over time to create a memorable track, one that's very reminiscent of the start of an anime. In general, the whole soundtrack is very moving and it's well worth a listen. This focus on music is continued in the sidequel Steins Gate Zero, which heavily reuses tracks from the first game but does so in interesting new ways, as well as bringing new sounds of its own. The title theme Messenger is pretty much up there with Gate of Steiner as among the series' best tracks, similarly spooky and creepy, yet very intriguing and addictive too. A later remixed version, Messenger Piano creates a heartbreaking spin on the pre-existing theme, showing the great ways that tracks can be changed to fit different moods. I'm hopeful that the next game in the science adventure series that's just released in the West, Chaos Child, can live up to the musical high bar set by the Steins Gate games. The Hotline Miami series, contrasting sharply with the majority of the other soundtracks in this article, which tend to be delicately composed tracks from Japanese developers, Denation Games, the developer of Hotline Miami, decided to embrace the neon-soaked 80s aesthetic of the game with a fitting soundtrack full of synth-heavy tracks. Songs like Perturbator frame the action on screen perfectly. It's just pure, enjoyable synth that you'll be stopping to listen to before you finish a level. Similarly, Knock is a deeper synth track that still fits so well with a design being pushed that you can't help but think about it long after the song has finished playing. Alternatively, if you'd rather just chill out, Horse Steppin' is the ultimate relaxing song with its laid-back beat, gentle synth, and trippy vocal sounds. The brilliance in music continues into the second game, with early tracks like Divide taking center stage, mixing unique sound effects and notes over a dirty, beautiful beat. The synth gets even deeper later on with songs like Decade Dance, which manages to be both subdued and thrilling, all the while remaining deeply addictive and catchy. Despite being the weaker game, I actually feel like Hotline Miami 2 comes out better than the first in soundtrack terms thanks to the sheer brilliance and experimentation. Demon Gaze, a surprising game in general considering the company developing it wasn't one I'd heard of before. Vita, that packed a killer violin-driven soundtrack, Demon Gaze remains one of Vita's most underrated games. From the opening notes of Departure, a very beautiful and lively track that hammers home the focus on melodies using string, the game went from strength to strength in terms of its sound. This was continued with the menu theme Memory, a haunting music box-inspired tune that remains subdued yet beautiful throughout and is one I really enjoy listening to in order to relax. With Demon Gaze 2 imminently releasing in the West, I'm looking forward to more from Experience Inc.'s sound department as it managed to really impress me with the first game. Epic Mickey 2. Forget the quality of the game itself, which was underwhelming despite expectations of a quality 3D platformer, or the quality of the port, which was sketchy at best on Vita. Epic Mickey 2 still managed to deliver one of the most gorgeous orchestral soundtracks on Vita. Tracks like Yen Sid's Lab, which starts off delicate and sweet then crescendos into classical animated brilliance, are a great introduction to the game. Meanwhile, other tunes like Mean Street sound much more creepy and mysterious, yet still retain that magical feeling. It's fitting that a game celebrating Disney's history would produce such a classically Disney soundtrack, full of touching moments and sweeping hooks, and it was even better to see that represented on Vita. Little Big Planet soundtracks for the Little Big Planet games have always existed in a strange space where parts are made up of original tracks while other bits use licensed tunes, yet somehow the two areas seem to mesh extraordinarily well due to great selections. This is extremely evident in the Vita iteration. Original track highlights include The Land of Marianne, a cute, dreamy track that perfectly encapsulates the fantasy world it's taking place in. This is a feeling kept in the licensed tracks such as "In a Creepy, Yet Awesome Piece of Music" by Plaid that perfectly frames the action happening on screen. Similarly, Ghost Von Frost fits perfectly with the spooky mansion the level takes place in, mixing well with the color palette and level design of the area. If there is one thing the Little Big Planet series consistently does, it's contain the most addictive yet fitting licensed music. Root letter. Ignore what you may have heard about the game itself, which, by the way, is much better than people make out. Check out my review. Its presentation is absolutely top-notch, and this extends into the soundtrack. Right from the moment you hit the countryside of Matsu and begin to look around, you're accompanied by the gentle track Over the Truth, which crescendos halfway through into a much more exciting, adventure-focused theme. It's a great introduction to the more subdued pieces the game has to offer. Similarly, Sepia is a sweet song that accompanies story revelations to create a calm, relaxed atmosphere as you piece together the puzzle of your missing pen pal. That's not to say the whole game is slow like this. Stand Up is a fantastic piece of piano-old music that plays to drive you forward into uncovering more of the plot, providing an upbeat backdrop to give you a real feeling that you're pushing forward with the adventure. Breakout is the ultimate culmination of this, an investigation theme that's exciting and tense and plays to show you're really onto something in the plot. The heavy violin use fits perfectly with the background beats and, combined with its two sister tracks Breakthrough and Breakdown, serves to highlight the investigations as the best part of the root letter experience. TXK. When the opening notes of Space is Everything play, the first song on the soundtrack to Jeff Minter's tuba shooter epic TXK, you can tell you're in for an audio treat. The game doesn't let up through a spree of techno, house, and all manner of electronic tracks like You Like and Noise Pulse. It's noisy, irreverent, and very, very good. And yet it isn't just fast electronic beats that frame the action so well. Slower tracks like Phrygian are achingly beautiful and show what a brilliant soundtrack can do to elevate a game. It's a shame Minotaur Project didn't release more on Vita, because these trippy electronic beats and fast-paced games seem to work so well on the handheld. Others, and there's so much more good game music out there too. Geometry Wars 3's songs are fantastically trippy and exciting, with the likes of Deadline and Titan Lost Dimensions. Tracks like Origin and the boss theme are beautiful and hectic, irregular and magic. High School Out of Order nails that 90s fighting game theme vibe through tunes like Battle Garden and Sunshine Filtering Through Foliage, which are both beautiful and make me very nostalgic for older days in gaming, while Super Stardust Delta hits some beautiful electro notes with tracks like Elena and Dirigo. Trust me when I say there's a world of fantastic Vita video game music out there, and this is only the list from games I've actually played. I'm sure there's much more worthy stuff that I just haven't gotten around to yet. Hopefully, it'll come back one day and write part 2 of this article. So I hope you enjoyed my tour through the soundtrack highs of the Vita, and perhaps it inspired you to go and listen to a few of them and discover what brilliance there is out there. Let me know which ones above are your favorites and recommend some of your own in the comments. More articles.